Hey gang, how you doing? So hopefully you can actually hear me this time. Apparently, last Wednesday at the Fun Not Fear Club, I made a bit of a boo-boo and I forgot to plug my microphone in. So hopefully it's working this time. Okay, I am really sorry about that, and I'm just going to talk you through very briefly the things that we discussed on the Friday. So obviously, it's been very, very hot. We talked a little bit in previous weeks about keeping our dogs cool in the sun. Obviously, we do not want them getting sunstroke or heat stroke, so we keep them in the shade. We take them, we don't put them in hot cars. We make sure we test the path, etc., etc. Make sure you keep them hydrated. One of the main things that I've spoke about recently is the risk of heat stroke and ways that you can help your dog to avoid heat stroke and also to overcome heat stroke. If you ever need any advice on that, look up a guy called Dr. David Marlin, who is an absolute genius. But when we talk a lot about what things our dogs can't do when it's hot, a lot of the time we sort of neglect the things that they can do. And some dogs are absolutely climbing the walls. And most dogs, when it's hot, they just want to have a rest. They're just hot and bothered and they don't want to know. But other dogs, they need entertainment. So that was kind of a thing that we were talking about on Wednesday. So I'm just going to go through those things with you now. Okay. Find my notes for you. Right, so one of the things that we can do with our dogs is we can teach them to use a paddling pool. So not all dogs love water, and filling up a paddling pool and just chucking it in the garden, they're not necessarily going to get in it. We have to teach them how to actually use it. So what we can do is we can get a bunch of their toys and some treats and nice yummy things and chuck them in a dry paddling pool. And you can even do this indoors to start with if you want to, if your dog's a little bit suspicious of novel items. And once they're happy hopping in and out of the dry paddling pool, looking for treats and toys and things, you can put a teaspoon of water in the middle of it. Okay, and then just carry on. So they're hopping in and around the teaspoon of water in the paddling pool. Then what you can do is you can start adding a little tiny bit more water. So maybe a cup full of water in and around the treats and the toys in the paddling pool. And then after that, perhaps you want to add, a little puddle of water in and around all the treats and the toys in the paddling pool. And gradually you build up so that you've got maybe a centimetre or two of water in the paddling pool with a pile of their toys, obviously things that, are okay to get wet. And your dog should happily be hopping in and out of it. So when they have a paddling pool, make sure that you always supervise them. Make sure it's not too deep, because if they do fall, we don't want them going under. And never ever leave them alone with the paddling pool. Try and keep it in a shaded area if possible, because they can still get a sunstroke even though they are wet and nice and refreshed because of the water. Okay. So another thing you can do with them is they can play with the hoses and the sprinklers. With the hoses and the sprinklers, you want to be really, really careful about how much your dog's actually drinking, because a lot of them will try and catch the water. So while it's a lovely thing for them to be able to chase about and catch the water and to cool down, and most dogs absolutely love hoses and sprinklers, just be mindful, because they can actually get something called water poisoning, which is something that you see sometimes with marathon runners. If they've drunk too much water in a very quick period of time, it can actually dilute the blood. So just be very, very aware that you don't want them to be drinking too much of the water if they are, hopping around, drinking out the hoses and chasing around in the sprinklers. And again, just make sure you keep them in the shade. Frozen treats are absolutely fine for dogs to have. They used to talk a lot about not giving your dogs ice cubes because it could send them into shock and blah, blah, blah. And that's actually not true. It's an absolute false thing. Now, frozen things will not actually help your dog to cool down from a thermoregulation point of view, but they will help them feel a little bit more refreshed. So I'm going to go through some recipes in Actually, I'll talk about that with you in a minute, okay? So what they can do is indoors is you can have your interactive toys. So with that, you want to be thinking of your Kongs, Snuffle mats. You can do you can buy balls that have got a hole in them. You can put kibble and stuff inside those and treats inside those, and they have to push them around to get the treats back out again. You can get some lift the flap toys. You can get all sorts of puzzle toys that are really good for dogs indoors. Anything that involves using their nose is going to be good. So you can hide treats around the house. You can do sausage trails where you draw with the sausage along like shady bits of path and things like that, and they smell along the line that you've just drawn until they find the bit of sausage. Things like if your dog's a raw fed dog, then maybe put their dinner in takeaway tubs and things like that and pop them around so they can go and find them. You can use things like raw tripe and stuff like that to do the trails with. Anything like that, you know, your dog's really going to love, and using their nose is going to really get them mentally and physically stimulated as well. So you can use cooling mats for them to lay on. You can also get cooling jackets, but just be a little bit careful with those because they're filled with a cold gel, basically. And what happens is as the dog's wearing them, they actually start to melt. So eventually they'll get to a point where you've actually just put a really thick jacket full of gel on your dog and it's not cold anymore. So at that point, your dogs are actually going to get hotter, not colder. So, and they can't get out of these jackets, obviously, to get away from them. So be really, really careful with the jackets, okay? So when you're opting to walk your dog, try for early morning or late evening if you can. I know some dogs, obviously, they need to go outside for a wee, and if you live in a flat or something like that, it's quite difficult. But do try and keep them on the grass rather than on the path because the grass is going to be a lot cooler for their feet. If you have a dog that's quite sociable and a nice cool area, then perhaps you could have a doggy play date and have your dog have a friend over, or you know, taking them to a shady area in the garden, perhaps, you know, just as long as they're not running around and wrestling too much and going too crazy, that might be a really nice idea for a dog that particularly likes other dogs. Some dogs just like chilling out with you, so you could just put the fan on and watch a film, and that's absolutely fine. Things like clicker training and all sorts of training sessions, as long as you use reward-based training, are always going to be good mentally for your dog. So you can teach them quite easy things when it's hot. We don't want to be trying to teach them anything that's too difficult that's going to cause frustration. But easy things like touch cues and stuff like that are going to be really useful for them. You can also proof up some of your existing cues, so practice the things they already know. And again, make sure they've got plenty of hydration, make sure they've got water at all times, and just avoid anything hot. All right, so that's me for this week, and I will try and make sure my microphone's working next week, and I will see you all soon.